What is the internet in India today?
Okay. Couple of ways to look at it, but I think the internet is still a new phenomenon. It's happening. It's definitely creating a lot more impact. I think it's you can evidently see how modern India is getting influenced by the web, but we still remain a country with very low penetrations. We're under 10%. Yeah, so the percentage of people who actually use the web is fairly low. I think the country is still looking for depth in the medium, but a very young phenomenon, still a very young phenomenon. So a lot of young people are active on the web and are doing things. So I think that's a broad sort of a sense that we have. It's still a medium for basics. So a lot of people would use it for necessary things like government jobs, filling up forms, buying air tickets. But the consumer side, the real participation of the web, does not necessarily have as much depth. That's still sort of early days.
You're talking about content depth. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I mean, actually interesting. When I look from a Western perspective, then it started more as a content platform and developed later in a commercial platform.
Mm-hmm.
And and still at those stage it was something which was like separate from people, as a shop is separate from your life. I mean, if you need something, then you go to a shop, but you do not live in a shop, do you?
Yeah.
So, and it's just recently that one could say that it really became interwoven into people's life in a way that they express themselves, that they communicate over the internet and things like that. So what you are saying is that here you experienced a different order. You started obviously with something in the West, came later, buying airline tickets. Actually, this is something maybe for 10 years you can buy airline tickets in Europe. And now you're telling me that you're expecting that some more content will come. I have the feeling that also in terms of access, there is a different order, because if I'm right, there's about maybe 300 million people in India using the internet in a way or another. So most of them might use it on a mobile phone. Is it true?
Oh, yes, of course. So if you're including mobile phones, yes. The number on PCs is be under 100 million. So yes, maybe a couple hundred people are on the mobile phone. But there's very interesting sort of a glitch here to understand that who do they call the mobile phone user? We just have about 40 or 50 odd million smartphone users in the country. Yeah. So the rest are not smartphone users.
40 or 15, you said?
50 million smartphone users.
But I mean, there are 120 million Indians on Facebook. How do they use it?
Yes.
If not via their mobile phones.
So mobile phones and some internet.
Okay.
And that's going to give you some number over here.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from that, what happens is a lot of telecom services give you a value-added service where you can download a music, a movie song, you can play a game. That gets counted as internet usage.
Okay.
So when you're talking a couple 100 million people using internet, it's actually that usage. So the depth of usage is still not very high. So there are only still very fewer people. And out of the about 100 million people using the internet, you have about, again, 30 to 40 million people on broadband internet. So you do not even have good internet speed for a majority.
So we unfortunately experienced this here out in Haryana. So quite a lot.
He was actually ready to leave this beautiful place and go back to Gurgaon.
Yeah, you can see, I mean, without internet, I feel like amputated arms. So how can I live in a place without arms? Makes no sense to me, right? For my sake, they can take away the pillows, but they should bring internet, right? So that's my order.
I can completely see that. So that's why perhaps you're in the heart of the country, and that's how most of us in this country would sort of experience the internet. So apart from a few large cities, it is very difficult to get good internet connection. So I think those are some of the sort of underlying factors. So if I start looking at the way India is perceived from a commercial standpoint, globally for global brands, I think India is still sort of a pre-emerging market on the web. It's not a market that's considered serious from an internet perspective, both in terms of participation, usage, any of those metrics. I think, yeah, so that's very
On the other hand, I mean, if you say only 10% of the 1.1 billion people in India is connected to the internet, then this is more than we have in the German-speaking internet in total, because in Germany and all the German-speaking countries, you might have about 100 million people living there. So, I mean, you know, we do not have 100% penetration yet. So these are more people than in the German countries,
We're
right?
also the second largest internet, English-speaking internet population after the United States, because we'll be bigger than the United Kingdom in absolute numbers, and there is no larger single country contributing to the English internet. So yes, as a market,
the second largest Facebook population after the US, for instance, and other numbers are quite interesting,
absolutely.
right?
So that's where the participation is interesting, but the usage or the depth of usage is still what I'm questioning. So you have a lot of people, so the numbers will show up because you are a largely populated country, but then participation is still what is happening of that usage is still going to grow, and a lot more is going to happen. And I'm seeing a lot of changes in different ways, in different forms, in terms of content and what's getting created. But I think a very large city phenomenon still, or maybe something in the area of media and journalism, something in that on the news front. But really the consumer lifestyle, sort of content, and the simple way to look at it is that we're a country of big families, so there are about 5 people in an average family, and they have a computer, which is they have access to a computing device. And now it's almost very probable that if you have a computer, you do have an internet connection. But what you would see is, apart from that one person who was the primary member to drive internet, the other members of the family do not find enough reason to be online. So they have access, they have internet, but they have no reason to go on the web.
So talking about your mother, if you mention the term internet to your mother, what would she think?
Oh no, of course she would have a better sense. Emailing, Skyping,
she communication.
Does actively? Yeah, communication. I think then again we'll have to see a highly stratified society, with different people in different strata. So you'll find some hyperactive individuals as well, but very tiny number. On an average, I think communication is very popular, because what's happening is the way the country is changing socially as well. You have more young people traveling abroad. You have more young people living on their own in different cities. So the communication advantage of the internet is very interesting. Either it's sharing pictures or emailing, Skype phone chats, because we're also a very social country at the same time. So I think that the communication aspect is very popular, and you'll see it's increasingly common even for grandparents to get onto Skype and connect with their...
Actually, together with an Indian friend, I was exploring business models, interesting business models here in the country, and then we stumbled across something for elderly, a service for elderly people. It was founded, I think, in Bangalore, and it caters elderly people in Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, whatsoever, a handful of those hotspots. And what are they doing? No, it's not nursing. They are helping those elderly people using technology to stay in contact with their NRA children who live abroad and things like that. So I found it quite interesting. I mean, a service which we actually would not consider to have in Europe, but maybe it would be a good idea to start that as well. Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a huge, as I said, fundamentally very social. Communications a big role.
Yes.
Parents, grandparents like to be in touch with their children. So that is definitely the first update that you'll see in that age group.
Yes. I mean, coming to a point, I know India for about 15 years now, and there is a lot of love, obviously, otherwise I would not sit here again. So, yes. But there's also a concern, and that concern is that I do not see a lot of change in the most important issue India has, in my view, which is a fight against corruption and all this bad governance. So my hope would be that the internet could be a tool enabling them, those very few, obviously, people who think different, who say, well, we have to stop it. Because in my view, if I think of a development here in that country, then this development will always come to a halt if you will not be able to overcome this bad governance, which I say, which starts from the very low area of personal interactions and goes up to the highest spheres of politics, obviously. Yeah? So, what do you think about that? Is there a chance? I mean, can there be a movement created out of the internet? Because the internet has the ability to, go across barriers. All of a sudden, people can communicate who would probably never had the chance to communicate. They can unite who would possibly never had the chance to unite. They also can inform each other about bad practices. Is there something like that, or?
Yes. So I think India has a chance, as any other place in the world, to bring social change through the web, which is the fundamental aspect of the web, allowing sharing and collaboration and letting spread information and news. And we saw this only in the last couple of years. There's so much that happened in India in the area of corruption, around the issue of violence against women, the whole rape case that happened in Delhi,
yes,
and
yes.
that this just became very, very rapidly shared and spoken. I think movements would have taken much longer to sort of gather that kind of, pan-India kind of a stage, had it not been for the web. I think it really impacts understanding and sharing of information. Like, for instance, corruption is a very interesting case. After the entire movement on corruption that happened.
But what happened to that movement? Please get me informed about it, because I never hear anything about it anymore. Also, I'm a member of a group, Facebook group, anti-corruption something, but it's silent all of a sudden.
Sure. So, which is where one would like to sort of question the extent of which internet makes a difference. I think what was an achievement, if I was to think about everything that happened around the corruption movement, that it has made corruption popularly understood as something that's bad. You'd be surprised. We never thought that corruption was bad till now. It was almost, if I questioned corruption, I was naive, because that's how the world is. That was the social understanding that I grew up with in this country. That you're naive if you're questioning it, because that's how things are. I think it's changed that. That no more somebody who's questioning corruption is considered naive, because they've understood that it has certain repercussions. What has happened outside of this sense of general social consciousness, I think partly, of course, some independent political factions have come up and they're taking a very strong stance. So this time in elections, you have somebody who's standing and saying there's a primary agenda around against corruption. You've got very established political parties saying that they would like to address this as an agenda. What would eventually happen is certainly questionable. It is fairly entrenched. It's very systemic. Our governance is systemic. We're a questionable democracy. We work in a legacy system with our governments, so they're run by very strongly held networks. So it's not a really open, fair system where anybody can come and rule it. And I think until that won't change, there is no reason that something that stems for it will change. So I think the best achievement has been awareness. And that's about it, really. Now we hope that this awareness leads to some fragments like these of people who start sort of getting into the political system and start bringing change. But until that the dynastic system politics will change, it won't happen. So I still think that politics will have to change first.
I understand completely, and I agree with you very much. And I think if you look, because we were discussing it earlier, to the Arab Spring, right? So then this was a movement which came from the youth, and also the young people, for instance, in Egypt. And they said, well, look, I was studying, I was diligent, I did whatever they told me I should do, and now I'm 30, and still I do not have the chance to get a job, be successful, get a family, and feed them. And how can this be? And then they said, well, this is all about corruption, about things where I do not have the chances which I should deserve because of all what I did. So, and this is something I could also see for India and in the Arab countries. It wouldn't have been possible if not digital media, especially mobile phones, but also obviously the internet, would have taught all those young people that they are not isolated, that this is not an individual fate they feel, but that this is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people feel the same. And this is a hope I would have for India as well, that it comes with a generation and that this generation feels unite and sees, well, why do I not get this job just because this other stupid guy has rich parents and they pay for the job? So how can that be? I was better in school and all those type of things, right? So
sure.
This is I think this is the point.
Sure.
If I'm talking about corruption, then I do not majorly talk about corruption up in the higher spheres of politics. I'm talking about this rickshaw driver here who is a crook actually, and or the taxi driver who charges for the entire day 1,500, and only because we enter this taxi, then he tells us for 1 hour it must be 600. Then I say, hey, where is the arithmetics here? This is not faithful behavior what you are doing, right? So. And this is something I could imagine that this can change through the internet and through digital media, and people feel that they are all the same. Right?
Sure. I have another view on this whole issue around corruption. I think one it's definitely connected to the economics of any nation. So you will find that countries where there is resource scarcity, there is a higher need to find a loophole because there is only so much, but there's so many people to consume it. So there's scarcity of resources. Countries where there is scarcity of resources, you will find corruption at a very everyday, day-to-day level. Countries that evolve from that stage or maybe have more resources, they do also have corruption, but maybe that gets concentrated at a very high level, especially in commercial areas. There are enough stories of large companies in Germany, in Japan, in the United Kingdom, the United States being involved in fairly corrupt practices and very large values. You know, Olympus, the whole company in Japan, came down because of corruption. Volkswagen has had multiple issues of corruption, hundreds of millions of dollars. But it's a very different corruption. It doesn't affect your daily life. It doesn't affect you when you go out, you shop, you buy things. But I think corruption is there in most countries around the world. It's such a human tendency. It happens when it happens in an institutionalized way, when it does not affect the masses in countries that have enough resources. It's not felt directly by your life.
Yeah, but maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the scarcity of resources, actually India has not a scarcity of resources. You have everything what you would need. The problem is it's not in the right hands. It's concentrated in a very few families and all the others do not participate in those resources. So my theory would be the opposite. It would be a scarcity of resources is most of the time a result of corruption and bad government. You know, if you go to Germany, for instance, we have nothing. We have no resources at all. And why are we, prospering as we do? Because we have a relatively fair system where everybody can achieve something if only he is diligent and really has a dream and tries to do this. Europe is not a heaven, definitely not. So, but if we discover corruption in Volkswagen, then people go to jail. Period. And Volkswagen has to pay a fine of a couple of billion euros. So this is something they really hurt and they really feel, and then they change it. Yes? So I think it's the opposite around. I think scarcity of resources is a result of bad governance and not.
I was actually going to come to the second part of this, and for me, into my point of view, it's innovation that's very important. It's the spirit to say I can create something.
But corruption hinders this. That's the point.
So when you look at even the sort of genesis of European countries, it comes out of scarcity. Yeah? Like you said, that it doesn't come out of resource fullness. It comes out of scarcity, and scarcity leads you to strive to create things because there's innovation. And look at it's the most difficult. Look at Scandinavia, extremely difficult climatic conditions, but very prosperous countries. And I think scarcity really pushed them on to progress and find ways to make things happen. I also think that we as a country are somehow more dependent for somebody to create things for us, because at the fundamental level of construction, it's not let innovation happen. And I'm not going to to my mind, I don't completely agree that innovation gets corrupted by corruption or hindered by corruption. Because if I really want to do something, I don't see anybody in this country that stops me from doing it, as long as I'm really true to what I want to do. I've, as a person, have lived in this country for many years, have not had a situation where I would have had to bribe anybody. I've never done it in my life or in any conduct of my life. So I don't see, and to create things, I run a business here, and I'm very confident if I want to grow my business, it will come from my genuine spirit of doing something that I really want to create. I don't think I can give somebody money and make a big business. I think it's going to be very short term, or it's going to be a completely different mindset. But I don't feel hindered by any public policy or any individual
there
to create
is
anything.
plenty of examples where people created something prosperous and big, and then all of a sudden somebody told them, look, the rules of game have changed, and now you have to give me like a share of it. And this is obviously something which is quite common here in India, and this is
Not
also
denying
something
that.
also.
Yeah, I'm not denying that.
So,
Absolutely.
and then that's for me corruption, or if I see that the chef physician of a hospital down there in Tamil Nadu, where I know a lot of people, it needs to be repositioned. A new guy has to come there. It's not the one who is the best. It's the one who paid just 2 years' salary, and then he gets the job. So maybe he has a rich family, but it's not the best physician. So that's and here it comes in place where innovation and development is hindered, because only the best physician would be the one who would maybe bring the hospital to a new height, and not the one who paid for that.
See, I'm really coming to the point of entrepreneurship over here in startups. When you really start something, so it's not about getting a job somewhere by paying money and creating an institution, which is also a reality. I'm trying to say at a grassroots level, when I can create something, nobody's stopping me. Nobody's saying that, I don't have to pay anybody to give me a platform. The moment I say I'm looking for somebody to give me a platform, I'm not starting from a purely entrepreneurial
That's everywhere the same, right?
So that's where I'm saying it's lacking. If you were to say why most innovation still comes out of the United States, is because there is a grassroots innovation movement. And grassroots innovation, to my mind, has least borders. The moment I want to get an institution, there is no institutional support in this country for entrepreneurship either. The government is not going to support me. There's no funding around. The VC is highly skewed towards particular sectors. It is just completely an open ground. So you can start things, But yes, the moment I go into a very institutionalized setup, I need to find my ways. And of course, there are extremely large businesses that have been built in corruption as well in this country, but there are also very large businesses that have been built out of true value. So I'm saying it definitely, it's not a black or white. It is not a black and white, but I'm saying there is hope and there is a possibility to do things, not finding an excuse that, this country doesn't have a game and it can't happen and everything is corrupt. To my mind, it's not, because I've never not had to face it. So I'm just talking from personal experience. It's possible to create things if you really wanted to create them. There is nobody stopping you there.
If you run a agency, consultancy, whatsoever, people business, then the main resource is people.
Yes.
So how do you get the people?
Oh yes, the biggest opportunity, the biggest challenge. We are a very resource country when it comes to people. Yes. But yes, finding right skills, finding people with the right motivation is definitely a challenge.
So how practically are you doing it?
So how are we doing it? I think we use the web fairly actively for this. We advertise this on Facebook, on our website. We're always hiring, so we get quite a few people who write into us. We are in an interesting marketplace here in Delhi as well. We have a little poster down there, so anybody who's interested in the kind of work we do walks up. We almost have one person walking every day. So I think that the kind of way we're organically growing, we get enough to sort of walk in. And of course, the most effective medium for hiring is referrals. So these are people who worked with us in the past or work with us now, or people who've heard about us and they will refer. I think these are some of the ways through which we will hire today.
And loyalty, that's another big issue, to retain the people. And
it is. Many reasons for loyalty. There are too many options, lots of things happening, aspirations, you always want to try something new, do something better. So I think it's a part of the dynamism of the economy that there is so much happening. And that's why I think loyalty is a challenge. I think an average person in the country works for a couple of years and then tries to find something else.
If it's true, for a couple of years, as far as I have heard, people really go very on short notice, and then they go to the next gig.
Yeah.
Is that true? Or?
Luckily, it hasn't happened with us, but I wouldn't, sort of disagree. It must be, I know it happens, but I think it's a two-way responsibility. It's also how you run the organization and how much sort of cohesiveness and how much sense of belonging you're giving to the team that's working with you. So I think we've been, relatively lucky there. So the stickiness is slightly stronger. Also have a very good network of people who continue to sort of, even after they work with us, continue to refer or keep in touch in many ways. So I think it does remain a challenge. Also for a young company, most of our recruitments are younger recruits. And
obviously they want to develop and
they have to take their chances. They sometimes want to go study further. They want to try different career options. So you'll see the churn is much higher the younger you are, and then sort of stabilizes with age. So I think it's also the growth curve of the business itself. As we start hiring more mature people, the churn changes because you have realities that makes you much more stable.
And actually, as a people business, you want to have a certain turnover. You want to have fresh blood in your organization, and sometimes it's even good if the best people leave. Then you have a chance to grow others. At least that was my experience. Okay. Look, I mean, interestingly to me is that the internet changed from an advertising perspective or communication perspective. It changed quite a lot. In the beginning, it was very much about the ad itself, be it a banner or something else, or be it a website. And it moved very much into the media area, where I come from more the creative side, so it's I have difficulties to say that, but something can be very successful with a good media plan and a bad advertising, but the other way around, it will never work. So is it the same here in India? Because I have the feeling that the media area is not that developed yet as it is in the Western countries. Right?
Absolutely. That's, comes from the first conversation we had. We're a poor content country. So content is where media comes from. So when you don't have enough richness and don't have enough variety in content, definitely the media sector is very shallow. So there are only a few platforms that you can choose from if you come from a traditional digital media buying perspective. There are only a couple of portals, a couple of popular news sites, so there's only so much where every brand is trying to be. So I don't think that gives enough depth to marketers to find enough space there. So I wouldn't.
It makes it also very expensive, isn't it? I mean,
it does make it expensive.
And the West is the other way around. There's so much inventory, theoretically, so that really you have to struggle as someone who wants to live from advertising. You have to struggle really very much because advertising is so low, or the prices are so low that you cannot live by it, actually, right?
Sure.
So, I have the feeling it's still different.
I think it's a market where you have few people who got a lot of traction, and a lot of people will be really struggling to get by. So some people who've become household names on the web will be more popular, get a lot of traction, got a lot of brands advertising with them. But there'll still be a lot of new people who would be struggling to get the right sort of advertising dollars in. So I think that it's sort of skewed towards just a few players. So there's very little richness, and there's also a lot of myopia because not everybody is really going there. So I'm reaching a very similar audience. I can't go and sort of reach newer kind of audiences by the internet. So I think it's a very limited sort of a reach that I have, and that's why I think it doesn't have breadth in itself. Yeah.
And then also I think if the share of mobile is high, and obviously it is somewhat high here, as we discussed already, then mobile advertising still is in its infancy in all meanings. So also this might add to that factor, so that it's not that developed yet. So the entire media and advertising and all the networks and automatic bidding systems and stuff like that we have developed in the Western countries. Obviously, they are not really here, right?
Sure, and that clearly again comes from the conversation we had earlier, which was the low use of smartphones. So yes, we are about 600 million odd mobile phones in the country, but just about 50 million smartphones. So a lot of richness of advertising cannot be built if you do not have those devices. So I think that's also close related why there isn't as much maturity in the mobile advertising market as well, because it's still very new in the country. It's still catching up. Yeah.
So what is a typical client of your company?
Okay. So there are two kinds of work that we do, and I can give you an example if you. So one is what we call research and consumer insights through the web. So we track data, conversations about brands, products, people on through social media, and then try to analyze them to understand various drivers. Either it could be the perception of the brand itself, or it could be how people are relating or giving feedback to new products, or it could be what people think about a certain trend. So companies could be interested from various perspectives to understand data from the social web. The second is, once you understand these people, how do you connect and establish a relationship with them? So that's what we call the engagement side. How do you keep connected through effective use of content, essentially? So that's the content side. So that's broadly what we do. A lot of our research work in the country is about brand tracking. A lot of brands want to know. It's highly driven towards customer service. A lot of the work that we do in the pure research areas, we're trying to look at areas like ethnography. We're trying to understand online netizens and trying to follow them, understand their behaviors, their purchases, trying to understand products, relationship with products. We also evaluate television advertising on the internet and advise marketers whether their television advertising is working or not based on the audience participation through the web. A lot of this work comes to us globally, but does not get as much consumed in India. So we would work with global brands on that front.
And they engage you or hire you directly, or is it through networks?
No, they would directly hire us, and we would work with them in this research for multiple countries in different languages, so that we can try.
Okay, do you have your own software solutions, tracking solutions, or things like that? Or
yes, we would license the technology. We have not created a technology, and we see the beauty is in the analysis. So we have a team of analysts that actually sort of sift through the data, make sense, connect it to the business needs, and say what value you can derive out of it. So a lot of that work gets driven from different parts of the world, but the more brand, customer service kind of work is what we see more coming from India. The second side of our
Indian brands or Indian customers.
Yeah, from Indian customers. Yeah, the Indian brandscape is also sort of mixed. I think we have about 30% brands that you could call Indian, but then you have 70% brands that are multinational brands but established in India. So I think we'll have both the customers, but just like the spread, you'll see there are more multinational brands working with us than Indian brands. On the engagement side, it's a lot about managing social profiles of brands on social networks like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and the like. It could be about creating interesting content. It could be audiovisual content, videos, comic strips, interesting text, trying to connect with people about new products, new brands, new offers, that kind of stuff. Also, we follow this model where we try to understand more brand stories. So it's essentially a storytelling approach of what is it that a company really has to offer. So we say the internet is actually moving from the short burst advertising style of communication to something that's much more sustainable. So if you could talk more about who you are as a company, what's the value that you follow, what kind of products you create, how you treat your employees, how you work with the community in which you're set up. We think that internet can allow a much longer sustained conversation for you. So that's usually the attempt that we try.
It's obviously also cheaper. I mean, because it's content which lasts, whereas the one-off thing it's gone after a week or after a month or something. Right?
Absolutely. Yes, it lasts forever, and it helps you optimize. People are always there. They look up for you. They get this information.
Search engine optimization and things like that. And that. Yes.
So yes, it's an investment for life. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.